सार्थ कथा सुनो सुनो सिद्धार्थ कथा.
Maitripurna Jai Bhim to all. Welcome to the most sacred and holy book, the Buddha and his Dhamma. Book 1, Siddhartha Gautama, How a Bodhisattva became the Buddha. Part 1, From Birth to Parivarja. It's Kula. Going back to the 6th century BC, northern India did not form a single sovereign state. The country was divided into many states, some large, some small. Of these, some were monarchical and some non-monarchical. The monarchical states were altogether 16 in number. They were known by the name of Anga, Magadha, Kasi, Kosala, Prichi, Malla, Chedi, Vatsa, Kuru, Panchalla, Matsya, Saurasena, Asmaka, Avanti, Gandhara, and Kamboja. The non-monarchical states were those of the Sakyas of Kapilavastu, the Mallas of Pava and Kushinara, the Lichavis of Vaishali, the Videhes of Mithila, the Koliyas of Ramagam, the Bulis of Alakapa, the Kalingas of Resaputta, the Mauryas of Pippalavana, and the Bhaggas with their capital on Samsara Hill. The monarchical states were known as Janapada, and the non-monarchical as Sangha or Gana. Not much is known about the nature of the polity of the Sakyas of Kapilavastu, whether it was republican or oligarchic. This much, however, is definitely known, that there were many ruling families in the Republic of the Sakyas, and that they ruled in turns. The head of the ruling family was known as Raja. At the time of the birth of Siddhartha Gautama, it was a turn of Shuddhodhana to be the Raja. The Sakya state was situated in the northeastern corner of India. It was an independent state. But at latter stage, the king of Kosala had succeeded in establishing its paramountcy over it. The result of this paramountcy was that the Sakya state could not exercise certain sovereign powers without the sanction of the king of Kosala. Of the kingdom then in existence, Kosala was a powerful kingdom. So was the kingdom of Magadha. Pasendi, king of Kosala, and Bimbisara, king of Magadha, were the contemporaries of Siddhartha Gautama. His ancestry. The capital of the Sakyas was the city called Kapilavastu, perhaps after the name of the great rationalist Kapila. There lived in a Kapilavastu a Sakya by name Jayasena. Sinahu was his son. Sinahu was married to Kakkana. Sinahu had 5 sons: Shuddhodhana, Dhododhana, Sakkodhana, Suklodhana, and Amitodhana. Besides 5 sons, Sinahu had 2 daughters, Amita and Pamita. The gotra of the family was Aditya. Shuddhodhana was married to Mahamaya. Her father's name was Anjana and mother's Sulakshana. Anjana was a Koliya and was residing in the village called Devadaha. Shuddhodana was a man of great military prowess. When Shuddhodana had shown his martial powers, he was allowed to take a second wife, and he chose Mahaprajapati. She was the elder sister of Mahamaya. Shuddhodana was a wealthy person. The lands he held were very extensive, and the retinue under him was very large. He employed it is said, 1,000 plus to till the land he owned. He lived quite a luxurious life and had many palaces. His birth. To Shuddhodana was born Siddhartha Gautama, and this was the manner of Gautama's birth. It was a custom among the Sakyas to observe an annual midsummer festival which fell in the month of Ashad. It was celebrated by all the Sakyas throughout the state and also by the members of the ruling family. It was the usual practice to celebrate the festival for 7 days. On one occasion, Mahamaya decided to observe the festival with gaiety, with splendor, with flowers, with perfume, but without drinking intoxicants. On the 7th day, she rose early, bathed in the scented water, bestowed a gift of 4 lakh pieces of money as alms, adorned herself with all the precious ornaments, ate choicest food, took upon herself the fast day vows, and entered the splendidly adorned royal bedchamber to sleep. That night, Shuddhodana and Mahamaya came together, and Mahamaya conceived. Lying on the royal bed, she fell asleep. While asleep, she had a dream. In her dreams, she saw that the 4 world guardians raised her as she was sleeping on a bed and carried her to the tableland of the Himalayas, placed her under a great sal tree and stood on one side. The wives of the 4 world guardians then approached and took her to the lake Mansarovar. They bathed her, robed her in a dress, anointed her with perfumes, and decked her with flowers in a manner fit to some divinity. Then a bodhisattva by name Sumedha appeared before her saying, I have decided to take my last and final birth on this earth. Will you consent to be my mother? She said, yes, with great pleasure. At this moment, Mahamaya awoke. Next morning, Mahamaya told her dream to Shuddhodana. Not knowing how to interpret the dream, the Shuddhodana summoned 8 Brahmins who were most famous in divination. They were Rama, Dhaga, Lakhana, Manti, Yanna, Suyama, Subhoga, and Sudatta, and prepared for them a befitting reception. He caused the ground to be strewn with festive flowers and prepared high seats for them. They filled the bowls of the Brahmins with gold and silver and fed them on cooked ghee, honey, sugar, and excellent rice and milk. He also gave them other gifts such as new clothes and tawny cows. When the Brahmins were propitiated, Shuddhodana related to them the dream of Mahamaya had and said, tell me what it means. The Brahmin said, "Be not anxious. You will have a son, and if he leads a householder life, he will become a universal monarch. And if he leaves his home and goes forth into a homeless state and becomes a sannyasi, he will become a Buddha, a dispeller of illusions in the world." Bearing the Bodhisattva in her womb, like oil in a vessel, for 10 lunar months, Mahamaya, as the time of delivery was coming nearer, desired to go to her parents' home for a delivery. Addressing her husband, she said, "I wish to go to Devadaha, the city of my father." "Thou knowest that thy wishes will be done," replied Shuddhodana. Having seated her in a golden palanquin borne by couriers, he sent her forth with a great retinue to her father's house. Mahamaya, on her way to Devadaha, had to pass through a pleasure grove of sal trees and other trees, flowering and non-flowering. It was known as the Lumbini Grove. As the palanquin was passing through it, the whole Lumbini Grove seemed like the heavenly Siddhartha Grove, or like a banqueting pavilion adorned for a mighty king. From the roots to the tips of the branches, the trees were loaded with fruits, flowers, and numberless beads of fine colors, uttering curious sounds, and flocks of various kinds of birds singing sweet melodies. Witnessing the scene, there arose a desire in the heart of Mahamaya for halting and sporting therein for a while. Accordingly, she told the couriers to take her in the sal grove and wait there. Mahamaya alighted from her palanquin and walked up to the foot of a royal sal tree. A pleasant wind, not too strong, was blowing, and the boughs of trees were heaving up and down, and Mahamaya felt like catching one of them. Luckily, one of the boughs held down sufficiently low to enable her to catch it. She rose on her toes and caught the bough. Immediately she was lifted up by its upward movement, and being shaken, she felt the pangs of childbirth. While holding the branch of the sal trees, she was delivered of a son in a standing position. The child was born in the year 563 BC on the Vaishak Purnima day. Shuddhodana and Mahamaya were married for a long time, but they had no issue. Ultimately, when a son was born to them, his birth was celebrated with a great rejoicing, with great pomp and ceremony by Shuddhodana and his family, and also by the Sakyas. At the time of the birth of the child, it was a turn of Shuddhodana to be the ruler of Kapilavastu, and as such was in the enjoyment of the title of Raja. Naturally, the boy was called Prince.